The Ore Mountains in Central Europe have formed a natural border between Saxony and Bohemia for around 800 years. For the 12th to the 20th centuries, today, the border between Germany and the Czech Republic runs just north of the main crest of the mountain range. The highest peaks of the Klínovec, which rises to 1,244 meters above sea level, and the Fichtelberg. The area played an important role in contributing Bronze Age ore, and as the setting of the earliest stages of the early modern transformation of mining and metallurgy from a craft to a large-scale industry, a process that preceded and enabled the later Industrial Revolution. Geography. Geology. The Ore Mountains are a Hercynian block tilted so as to present a steep scarp face towards Bohemia and a gentle slope on the German side. They were formed during a lengthy process. During the folding of the Variscan orogeny, metamorphism occurred deep underground, forming slate and gneiss. In addition, granite plutons intruded into the metamorphic rocks. By the end of the Paleozoic era, the mountains had been eroded into gently undulating hills, exposing the hard rocks. In the Tertiary period, these mountain remnants came under heavy pressure as a result of plate tectonic processes during which the Alps were formed, and the North American and Eurasian plates were separated. As the rock of the Ore Mountains was too brittle to be folded, it shattered into an independent fault block which was uplifted and tilted to the northwest. This can be very clearly seen at a height of 807 meters above sea level on the mountain of Komary Vysoká, which lies on the Czech side, east of Zinval-Jorgenfeld, right on the edge of the fault block. Consequently, it is a fault block mountain range which, today, has been incised by a whole range of river valleys whose rivers drain southwards into the Eger and northwards into the Mulde directly into the Elbe. This process is known as dissection. The Ore Mountains is geologically considered to be one of the most heavily researched mountain ranges in the world. The most important rocks occurring in the Ore Mountains are schist, phyllite and granite, with contact metamorphic zones in the west. Basalt has remnants in the Klínovec, Scheibenberg, Barenstein, Polberg, Vilky Spikak, Jelení Hora and Geisingberg, as well as gneisses and rhyolite in the east. The soils consist of rapidly leaching grus. In the western and central areas of the mountains it is formed from weathered granite. Phyllite results in a loamy, rapidly weathered gneiss in the east of the mountains, producing a light soil. As a result of the subsoils based on granite and rhyolite, the land is mostly covered in forest. On the gneiss soils it was possible to grow and cultivate flax in earlier centuries and, later, rye, oats and potatoes up to the highlands. Today the land is predominantly used for pasture, but it is not uncommon to see near natural mountain meadows. To the north of the Ore Mountains, west of Chemnitz and around Zwickau, lies the Ore Mountain Basin, which is only really known geologically. Here there are deposits of stone coal where mining has already been abandoned. A similar but smaller basin with abandoned coal deposits, the Dolan Basin, is located southwest of Dresden on the northern edge of the Ore Mountains. It forms the transition to the Elbe Valley zone, is also mainly known in geological circles. Terrain. The western part of the Ore Mountains is home to the two highest peaks of the range. Klínovec, located in the Czech part, with an altitude of 1,244 meters, and Fichtelberg, the highest mountain of Saxony, Germany, at 1,214 meters. The Ore Mountains are part of a larger mountain system and adjoin the Fichtel Mountains to the west and the Elbe Sandstone Mountains to the east. Past the river Elbe, the mountain chain continues as the Lusatian Mountains. While the mountains slope gently away in the northern part, the southern slopes are rather steep. Topography. The Ore Mountains are oriented in a southwest-northeast direction and are about 150 kilometers long and, on average, about 40 kilometers wide. From a geomorphological perspective, the range is divided into the western, central and eastern Ore Mountains, separated by the valleys of the Schwarzwasser and Zwickauer Mulde and the Flohe. The division of the western section along the river Schwarzwasser is of a more recent date. The eastern Ore Mountains mainly comprise large, gently climbing plateaux, in contrast with the steeper and higher-lying western and central areas, and are dissected by river valleys that frequently change direction. The crest of the mountains themselves forms, in all three regions, a succession of plateau and individual peaks. To the east it is adjoined by the Elbe Sandstone Mountains, and, to the west, by the Elster Mountains and other Saxon parts of the Vogtland. South of the central and eastern Ore Mountains lies the North Bohemian Basin, and, immediately east of that, the Bohemian Central Uplands, which are separated from the eastern Ore Mountains by narrow fingers of the aforementioned basin. South of the western Ore Mountains lie the Sokolov Basin, the Egergraben and the Dopov Mountains. To the north the boundary is less sharply defined because the Ore Mountains, a typical example of a fault block, descend very gradually. The topographical transition from the western and central Ore Mountains to the lower hill country to the north between Zwickau and Chemnitz is referred to as the Ore Mountain Basin, that from the eastern Ore Mountains as the Ore Mountain Foreland. Between Freital and Pirna, the area is called the Dresden Ore Mountain Foreland Abanawitzbezendorf-Bekardswald Plateau. Geologically, the Ore Mountains reach the city limits of Dresden at the Windberg Hill near Freital and the Karsdorf Fault. The V-shaped valleys of the Ore Mountains break through this fault in the shoulder of the Dresden Basin. The Ore Mountains belong to the Bohemian Massif within Europe's central uplands, a massif that also includes the Upper Palatine Forest, the Bohemian Forest, the Bavarian Forest, the Lusatian Mountains, the Iser Mountains, the Giant Mountains and the Inner Bohemian Mountains. At the same time it forms a Y-shaped mountain chain, along with the Upper Palatine Forest, Bohemian Forest, Fichtel Mountains, Franconian Forest, Thuringian Slate Mountains and Thuringian Forest, that has no unique name but is characterized by a rather homogeneous climate. According to cultural tradition, Zwickau is seen historically as part of the Ore Mountains. Chemnitz is seen historically as just lying outside them, but Freiberg is included. The supposed limit of the Ore Mountains continues southwest of Dresden towards the Elbe Sandstone Mountains. For this perspective, its main characteristics, i.e., gently sloping plateaus climbing up to the ridgeline incised by V-shaped valleys, continue to the southern edge of the Dresden Basin. North of the Ore Mountains the landscape gradually transitions into the Saxon lowland and Saxon Elbland. Its cultural geographical transition to Saxon Switzerland in the area of the Muglitz and Gottleuber valleys is not sharply defined. Notable peaks: the highest mountain in the Ore Mountains is the Klínovec at 1,244 meters in the Bohemian part of the range. The highest elevation on the Saxon side is the 1,215-meter high Fichtelberg, which was the highest mountain in East Germany. The Ore Mountains contain about 30 summits with a height over 1,000 meters above sea level, but not all are clearly defined mountains. Most of them occur around the Klínovec and the Fichtelberg. About a third of them are located on the Saxon side of the border. See List of mountains in the Ore Mountains. Important rivers from west to east: Schwota, Svitava, Rolava, Zwickauer Mulde, Schwarzwasser, Chemnitz, Wurstnitz, Swanitz, Freiberger Mulde, Zschope, Flohe, Red Weichieritz and Wild Weichieritz, Muglitz, Gottleuber, Natural regions in the Saxon Ore Mountains. In the division of Germany into natural regions that was carried out Germany-wide in the 1950s, the Ore Mountains formed major unit group 42 to 42 Ore Mountains, 420 southern slopes of the Ore Mountains, 421 upper western Ore Mountains, 422 upper eastern Ore Mountains, 423 lower western Ore Mountains, 424 lower eastern Ore Mountains. Even after the reclassification of natural regions by the Federal Agency for Nature Conservation in 1994, the Ore Mountains, Region D16, remained a major unit group with almost unchanged boundaries. However, at the beginning of the 21st century, the working group Naturschalt und Gebirgscharakter of the Saxon Academy of Sciences in Leipzig merged the Ore Mountains with the major unit group of Vogtland to the west and the major landscape units of Saxon Switzerland, Lusatian Highlands and Zittau Mountains to the east into one overarching unit, the Saxon Highlands and Uplands. In addition, its internal divisions were changed. Former major unit 420 was grouped with the western part of major units 421 and 423 to form a new major unit, the Western Ore Mountains. The eastern part of major units 421 and 423 became the Central Ore Mountains, and major units 422 and 424 became the Eastern Ore Mountains. The current division therefore looks as follows: Saxon Highlands and Uplands on Mountains, Western Ore Mountains, Central Ore Mountains, Eastern Ore Mountains. The geographic unit of the southern slopes of the Ore Mountains remains unchanged under the title of Southern Ore Mountains. Climate: the climate of the higher regions of the Ore Mountains is characterized as distinctly harsh. Temperatures are considerably lower all year round than in the lowlands, and the summer is noticeably shorter and cool days are frequent. The average annual temperatures only reach values of 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. In Oberwiesenthal, at a height of 922 meters above sea level, on average only about 140 frost-free days per year are observed. Based on reports of earlier chroniclers, the climate of the upper Ore Mountains in past centuries must have been even harsher than it is today. Historic sources describe hard winters in which cattle froze to death in the stables, and occasionally houses and cellars were snowed, and even after snowfalls in April, the population was regularly cut off from the outside world. The Upper Ore Mountains was therefore nicknamed Saxon Siberia already in the 18th century. The fault block mountain range that climbs from northwest to southeast, and which enables prolonged rain to fall as orographic rain when weather systems drive in from the west and northwest, gives rise to twice as much precipitation as in the lowlands, which exceeds 1,100 mm on the upper reaches of the mountains. Since a large part of the precipitation falls as snow, in many years a thick and permanent layer of snow remains until April. The ridges of the Ore Mountains are one of the snowiest areas in the German central uplands. Fern winds, and also the so-called Bohemian wind, may occur during certain specific southerly weather conditions. As a result of the climate and the heavy amounts of snow, a natural dwarf mountain pine region is found near Satzung, near the border to Bohemia at just under 900 meters above sea level. By comparison, in the Alps these pines do not occur until 1,600 to 1,800 meters above sea level.